Hi, I'm John Kursky, and in this video I'm going to show you that if you see this issue in Power Query Lint, what query folding is and how to avoid breaking the fold. Alright, so before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so that you can keep up to date with all the new features and rules we'll be putting out in the next couple of months. And with that, let's talk a little about query folding. So query folding is the concept that follows Roche's maxim of data transformation. And with that maxim, the idea is that with data should be transformed as far upstream as possible and as far downstream as necessary. So the idea when it comes to Power Query is if we can push those changes up to the source systems to do some of the transformations, the better. And in the case of SQL Server, this is something that we work with in Power Query a lot. And the issue we have is maybe when we first start consuming that information from SQL Server, we're breaking the fold. And Power Query has this concept of query folding in which if you have your Power Query in such a way and the steps in a certain format, you can actually translate that, or the Power Query engine will translate that into SQL and issue that query to SQL Server, do the transformations, and then return that data, and then any of the steps that can't be executed by SQL Server are done by Power Query. And you can get some improved performance as a result. So let me walk you through a common scenario and one that shows up in Power Query Lint. So up on the screen here, we have a Power Query file, and a lot of the time, if you're working with a source, you may have done the best practice on adding a server parameter and a database parameter, and typically what you'll have from here is you have the advanced option. Now, a lot of us, what we'll do is, hey, we'll use this and say, all right, well, let's add in a query. Maybe we're identifying the columns that we want to make sure are pulled in, so we're not pulling in more columns than we need to, which is a smart approach. And if I hit OK, one thing in Power Query that you may have noticed is if you right-click, there's this option that says View Native Query. In Power BI Desktop, if you see that disabled, that means that that step has broken the fold. And the query actually, from moving forward, will not allow you to use query folding. So that first step you take connecting to the data source and you issue a SQL query, you may be breaking the fold already, which means any subsequent steps won't be using query folding. And this can lead to performance issues. And again, if you want to take advantage of SQL Server to do the transformations, you're missing out. So how do we avoid that? Well, first of all, if I was to go to Advanced Editor, copy this, put it into Power Query Lint, you'll see that it says enable query folding when using native queries. And it has this, zoom in here, enable folding equals true. So this link will walk you through the steps, but let me show you how to do it very simply. So if I go back to Power Query here and hit cancel, and let me just duplicate the query. If I right-click, go to Advanced Editor, the one thing I want to do is I'm going to take this query and move it into another step. So I am going to select all of that and get rid of the query parameter here. I'm going to hit comma, hit Run SQL, and I'm going to use value.native query here. Now value.native query requires a target and the query is text. So the target is the previous step output, which is source, and then I'm going to paste in my SQL query here. Now at this point, you still, if I was to save this and make an update, we're still breaking the fold. There's a key parameter you want to add into this. So what we're going to do is add in a third argument, do enable folding equals true. And then the last step is, since the output still says source, we want to make sure run SQL is there. All right. So if I hit OK, once it finishes processing, if I right click here, now it says View Native Query is enabled. And if I was to click on that, you can actually see that the native query is here. Now, at this point, any future steps may break the folding, and we can cover that in different videos, but this is a good start to avoid breaking the fold in subsequent steps. Now, if I was to right-click, go to Advanced Editor, and now paste this into Power Query Lint, you'll see that the lint issues are gone. Now, if you want to make that update to the original table, what you'll want to do is you never rename this table and delete the old table, because that could break the relationships. What you'll do is copy this code, hit cancel, go to the original code, and overwrite it. And then you can delete that table that you were experimenting the updates with. And so now if I go back, you'll see with that new table, query folding is not broken. All right, so today what I showed you was how to not break the fold, what query folding is, and how Power Query Lint can help identify those common issues you have with SQL Server. And just with a simple line change of value.native query, we can make sure that query folding is preserved in subsequent steps, or at least allowed, so that you can take advantage of query folding. And with that, really appreciate your time today. Please like and subscribe to this video, and stay tuned for more information about Power Query Lint.